This evening we're very fortunate. We've got a double bill. We have Helena Smart, who's going to talk about the photographs, the photographic collection of the city libraries. And also we have Lindsey Sutton, who's from the National Trust, going to talk about the Chambry Harden collection. So without any more ado, I will pass over to Helena and look forward to hearing about all the photographs that the Liverpool libraries have.
No, thank you for that nice introduction. Hello, this is my second appearance at the Society. Myself and my colleague Sarah gave a talk, I think it was last year, and I was delighted to be asked if we'd like to speak about the photographs, and it's myself and Lindsey this evening. So I'm Helena, and I have worked at Central Library for 20 years. So I've got a good handle on the collections, I've got a good idea of what we hold, and I'm happy to take questions at the end if you've anything, you know, I don't cover this evening, or if there's anything else you just want me to try and help you with. So as I say, 20 years at the library, which means that I was there during the big redevelopment of Central Library. And it is 10 years this year since we reopened the doors to the wonderful building. Sorry. So this is a lovely watercolour of Central Library in William Brown Street. And this is from our collections of watercolours that we hold. And I just really like this image. I like to show it off. I think it's just wonderful. It really captures the essence of that area, and it's, you know, it's nice that it's still preserved in that way. So this is where I have I'm honoured to work, and this is where the archives and the local studies collections are also housed as well. And we've also got a fantastic rare books collection. So for those that haven't been to Central Library, this is where, in the archives, this is where we're based. This is what we look like now when you come in since the redevelopment. We've got a wonderful atrium. It's very modern, very new. It's very photogenic. You know, people love to come in and take a picture and put it on Twitter or whatever. So it's a lovely building to work in. But just to let you know that the historic parts that I'm sure lots of you are very familiar with remain the same. The Picton Reading Room, the Hornby Library, still an absolute delight to work in, and all the paint's been restored, the woodwork's been restored. So if you haven't been in, you know, please do come and visit us. This is me in our repository. So I like to show this image because we've got 15 kilometres of shelving that looks like this. So it's spread over 4 floors, and obviously we've got paper documents, things like minute books and letters and diaries, you name it really, as well as our photographic collections, which is what I'm going to discuss with you this evening. With so many different formats, we've got different areas in the archive to keep things in. So where I am in this photograph, that is me in this main repository with all the paper documents, the books, that type of thing in the boxes. But with the photographs, they are kept in a sort of smaller, colder room. They like a cold environment, the photographs. They don't like it warm, they don't like humidity, they like a cold environment. And if you've got negatives, they like it even colder. So we've got a big blast freezer, which we keep, which Lindsey does have to go into a lot more than I do. So just to give you a little bit of, just so you can visualise where we are and, you know, how we care for the city's heritage. So tonight, what I'm going to discuss with you is our main collections, and I've just popped them on the screen. So photographs and small prints is a huge sort of rag bag of everything, all subjects, all people, all events, from a whole host of, lots of different provenance. We've got city engineers from the City Engineers Department, house and photographs from the Housing Department, chambray hardening, which Lindsey will talk about. We've got photographs spread throughout all of our collections, our personal collections, our societies. So I'll touch on that a little bit. A couple of Liverpool photographers that I think need to be mentioned because we use a lot of their images you will be familiar with, and photographs in newspapers and also secondary texts as well, just to give you an idea of where you might find photographs if you come to the archives, what collections are strong in different areas. So I'm not going to go into this in too much because that would be a different presentation, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about why we collect photographs. I mean, not just because they're nice to look at, of course, but it is a way of visualising how an area has changed throughout time. It's a way of documenting our city. I mean, I've lived here 22 years, and when I arrived in Liverpool, it was just full of cranes. There was just cranes everywhere because Liverpool 1 was being built. And at the time, because I didn't know the city well before that, that was kind of my impression of it, just lots and lots of cranes. And then about 5 years into living here, I was approached by a gentleman, Joe McLaughlin, in the archives. And he was a retired policeman. And he came in and said, I've been documenting the rise of Liverpool 1. I'm an ex-policeman. I have access to areas that you wouldn't get access to. I know all the security guards. And he could get really high up sort of viewpoints. And he brought in this collection and it was just phenomenal. It just really showed this massive reconstruction from 20 years ago. And it's that collection is really important now. People are coming in, people are asking for it. What have you got about the development of Liverpool 1? So as much as our historic photographs are really important, of course they are, it's also that more contemporary photograph as well. And obviously we've lived through a pandemic, and it was important to try and capture those empty streets, capture the Black Lives Matter movement on St George's Hall when the protests were in the city. And we're always trying to think what's going to be important in the future, so that we have collections that people will look back in 80, 100, 150 years, and they'll be as important as the collections that I'm talking about this evening. So we've got, pictures of lost buildings. Pubs are always popular. People love a picture of a pub. We get lots of inquiries for the pub pictures. There's a lovely series of books called A Pub in Every Corner, and it's lots of photographs of pubs through across the city. That's always popular. Notable events, as I say, the Black Lives Matter protest was important to document that, as well as looking back at some of the protest pictures that I'll show you later on. So this is a photograph. One of the sort of first collections that I worked on at Liverpool was the Jewish archives, and I was responsible for cataloguing those collections. And I just really liked this family photograph. It just shows all different generations. Everyone's wearing their finery. It's a wedding photograph. And it was just to kind of point out, as much as we've got, these sort of landscape, pictorial photographs, we also have photographs of real people as well, real family life events that are really significant. So you know, it's just to kind of make you aware of that. And I also think this is a lovely photograph. We're often asked, what is your earliest image of the city? And as far as we know, certainly, you know, Roger, my colleague, what he's managed to find out, our research officer, is that we think this is our earliest photographic image. And as you can see, it's from 1856 and it's St George's Hall. And I think it's a wonderful photograph. You know, you've got the carts and, you know, you can see the dress at the time. And quite often film companies will be interested in this type of image, production companies. So I just wanted to show you that tonight. Another early image is all these fine gentlemen laying the foundation stone for the museum and library. And that was a year later in 1857. So some of you might recognise the Black Bull. I've tried to throw in a few Gateacre pictures this evening for you. So this is from 1938, and what I'll do now is I'll talk just briefly about some of our major collections. So I'm going to start off with the photographs and small prints collection, and that has photographs, small prints, engravings, postcards, and it comes from a whole variety of different sources. Members of the public giving us photographs that have been commissioned by the library, because the library wanted to document a particular place or a particular event, so commissioned photographs as well. So a real mix. And the beauty of this collection, I think, is it's catalogued by subject. So it's got quite a sort of, you know, kind of weird and wacky catalogue in some ways, but it's really good. You know, it's got all your streets, it's got all your churches listed, it's got your events, it's got your notable buildings. So if you were interested in a particular topic, this would be your first port of call, I would say. Look at the photographs and small prints, see what you can find there. It's got a wonderful parks collection and theatres, cinemas. People are always interested in seeing them as well. So this is a physical collection. It's physical photographs in folders. You can come in and see them, but many of them have also been digitised. So it means we've put them on a scanner and we've attached that image to our archive catalogue. So if you're at home, you can search the catalogue, and quite often with this collection, you'll find a little thumbnail image, and it means that you can click on it and actually view the photograph without having to, you know, actually physically come in and see it. You know, it's a thumbnail, but sometimes it's enough to know whether it's what you're interested in or not, and it may sort of draw you in to come and view the original. So just to give you an idea of the breadth of this collection, so this is the Black Bull, 1938. We've got Gateacre Range, and that was from 1920. This particular image. Some of you may be familiar with that. We've also got Church of England School in Gateacre. And I just thought some of you may have went there, you may have children that went there, so I thought that would be a nice one to put in. And a photograph of the branch library as well in Gateacre, and that was from 1959. Something I just want to draw your attention to, and I'm not going to go on about this evening really, it's just to point out that I've noted someone's copyright on that photograph, because that's the polite and that's the legal thing to do. Lots of people will take images and put them on social media, put them in the books, and they won't credit the photographer. But you know, there is such a thing as copyright, and it's really important. And it's so I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that, you know, that's why I credit the person that took the photograph for this. So all of these photographs were all from just that one collection, photographs and small prints. So you had schools, you've got, you know, estates, you've got the Black Bull, you've got the library, you've got a whole host of, you know, I could have gone on and on with lots and lots of different images just on your one area. There's also aerial shots, and I think these were purchased from the centre by the library, as far as I'm aware, because we really wanted that sort of document of the city from that aerial view. And we've got quite a lot of aerial views, and they're not, you know, I think they're little known, but a really important source. I'm sure some of you are trying to work out, what's that, where's that? Okay, so that was photographs and small prints. Now, one of our other major collections is the City Engineers. Some of you may be familiar with these images as well, because they do get used quite a lot. So the City Engineers, 158,000 images in this one collection, and massive date range, 1897. So this is one of the early photographs, right through to 1995. I mean, it's phenomenal. So the photographs were there to support the work, obviously, of the city engineer, the city surveyor, the housing department, the medical officer of health. That's why they were taken. You know, they weren't taken really from a social point of view. They were taken to sort of support the work, the important work going on in the city. So sometimes you'll open it up and you think, oh, there's another pothole, or there's another street road improvement, because that's what they were there to document. So it's sort of road improvements, the laying of sewers, but what it captures is all this sort of life as well, how people were living. So it's a phenomenal collection. It also captures big events like the infilling of St George's Dock for the Liver building going up. It captures work around Otterspool Promenade for when that was laid. So it's not only a local kind of collection that's only of interest to people from Liverpool, it's sort of nationally important as well, because it really documents the work of the city and what was going on in terms of planning, housing, public health. This is another one, and it's court housing, and it shows how people were living at the time. Again, you know, these are often used in films and, you know, for reconstructions and whatnot. Fantastic image of Lord Street from the City Engineers, really captures the grandeur of the street, and that was quite an early photograph, 1912. And just to follow that with Lord Street in 1949 after the Blitz. So it just shows you the absolute transformation. Two images from the same collection. So that was the housing department, the City Engineers. So now I'm just going to talk a little bit about another significant collection, which is the housing department photographs. So these are, again, were taken by the housing department. They were deposited by that department to the city library. There's only 12,000 photographs, but boy, are they good photographs. You know, they are really, you know, something else. They capture 19th century housing, so the first municipal tenements. It shows insanitary conditions in the 1920s. It also shows those suburbs springing up. So places like Speke and Wilton, Norris Green, you know, it shows you sort of all of that, you know, the housing all sort of taking place, sort of springing up there. lots of photographs of tenements from the 20s and 30s, and also the slum clearance as well in the 1950s and 60s. So a real documentary evidence of that huge social change that took place in the 20th century. So just as I mentioned, so there are the sort of three major collections: photographs and small prints, city engineers, house and photographs. But then we've also got photographs spread throughout our other collections, such as the Society for Cruelty to Children. And these are heartbreaking photographs, really used, you know, the society went out to kind of capture a pictorial record of child poverty and slum housing, and that collection really does capture that. So just moving away from that, again, throughout our collections, you will have notable events. And I thought, given the politics that are going around us at the moment, here is the 1911 transport strike, where 85,000 mobilised on St George's Hall. And here's another image just to give you an idea of the sort of sheer volume that turned out for the strikes. So again, you know, notable events. I just picked this one out. Thought it was quite timely, but you know, I could have picked anything out really. So there's important people that I like to mention, because some of our photographs are, you know, we wouldn't have them if it wasn't for these gentlemen. So this is Charles Inston. And as well as sort of, you know, people know, you know, Lindsey will talk to you about Chambray Hardman, and these are like, this is like another example of a photographer whose collection is with us and of, you know, is really significant. So Charles was a British pictorialist, and he was an elected member of the Royal Photography Society. And some of our most iconic images, and I am sure you will recognise them when I flick on, he took them. It was, you know, we wouldn't have these images if it wasn't for him. So this one is the fish market in Great Charlotte Street, which I think is a wonderful image. It's just full of life. You know, it's just fantastic. And the next one I'm sure you'll recognise, which is the children round the fountain, round Stebble Fountain. And this has been, you know, it's in countless books. It just, you know, gets recreated. And this was from about 1895, I believe. So I think there was a lot of them, the boys were sort of street traders. You can see they've got no shoes. Some of them a bit well dressed, a bit more well dressed than others. So yeah, that's, you know, I just like to make a note of Inston, because, as I say, some of our most iconic images were taken by him. There is also Alderman Burke, and he was a late 19th century photographer, and what he did was capture Liverpool street life. So when I was talking earlier about, you know, capturing maybe sort of things that are no longer like with us, like, you know, just things that don't happen anymore or you don't see, that was what Thomas Burke tried to capture, that sort of real life. And you can see one here where there's, you know, the sort of cotton bale on the table, which I think is a wonderful photograph. Again, he was sort of, I think this is about 1912, I think. And I just wanted to sort of highlight Thomas Burke as well. And that was another image from him, just again showing, you know, a girl doing a turn in a sort of, you know, one of the bars. And that's what he did. He tried to document, I think, you know, life at that time. So there's a wee bit of a contrast with this one. It's just to highlight that, as well as all our kind of, you know, original physical photographs, We've also got an amazing collection of local studies books, and many of them have wonderful photographs. And it's just to point out that we probably won't have the copyright of those photographs. They'll lie with the author, or the author would have sourced them from somewhere else. So there may be people in the group who, they might spot a photograph in a book and think, how do I use that on my web page, or how do I use that on my social media? It's not that easy sometimes because it's very hard to establish copyright. But again, I quite like this photograph again of the transport strike, and obviously that it's been touched up as well. They've made it colour. So, just take a wee drink of water. So how do we access these collections then? So this is a bit of a boring slide. It's not the most exciting of slides, but the reason I've popped it in is we have purchased this digital system where we can keep all our digital photographs, and more often now people are giving us digital photographs. They're not really coming in with albums anymore and saying, do you want my photographic albums? It does happen, but more often it's, can I send you X amount of WAV files or whatever, or so many files of my digital photographs. So we've purchased a system and we've started to pop them into it, and we have got a lot of content. It's about 50,000 images in there now. So it's we haven't really launched it yet. When you go on our archive catalogue, there is some links to Photographic, it's and you can actually view photographs if it's been tagged, sits alongside the catalogue. But in the next couple of months, we will be launching this. The website address will be made public, and you'll be able to, from the comfort of your home, look at photographs, and it'll be bigger than a thumbnail, so they'll be nice to view. You'll be able to sit and listen to oral histories without, having to come into the library. There is increasingly more film, so people will give us film, bits of poetry. So you'll be able to sit and just, watch some clips that people have made, different films. So as I say, it's a resource that is new to us. We are really just kind of pushing it now. And soon the link to this Photographic will be on our council website. So you'll be able to go straight to it and see what collections are on. And even if you look at it and you don't find what you're looking for, go back to it because it's always been added to. So for example, this Eric James, this is what the catalogue looks like. And this was a gentleman, he came in a month ago, wanted to deposit his digital photographs with us from the 50s and 60s. They are really, really good photographs. But what you'll be able to do is sit and look at them, and it'll be bigger than a thumbnail. It won't be a huge photograph, but it's certainly a really good image. You'll be able to see the detail. You won't be able to download it, but if you did want to have a copy of it, you would contact us, and we can do something at our end. So the reason I've put that up there is just, this is a gentleman, lives in Liverpool, wanted to donate his photographs from the 50s and 60s. And we're always getting new donations and we're always adding to it. So if you don't find it the first time you look, don't give up, just sort of go back and revisit it. If you do want to look at our physical photographs, we still love people coming in. So we are based in Central Library. We have a search room just for that very purpose. So people can come in and view photographs securely. I won't go into too much detail, but basically there's no bags, no food, no drink, and that's just to keep the documents preserved. It's not because we're really strict. It's just we like to keep things preserved, for the future generations. So when you visit, we will ask you to pop your stuff in the locker. You would come in and your documents would be out for you. So we do operate an appointment system, and especially for the photographs, because as I said, they are kept in a cold climate. So they have to come out and acclimatise into a sort of warmer climate. Then they get brought out into the search room. So when you arrive on the day, it's unlikely we would be able to get your documents for you. But if you have a little go at the catalogue, or if you email us and tell us what you want, we can make sure they're ready for when you visit. This is what our search room looks like, so that you're not daunted if you come in. Big banks of tables, plenty of space, you know, you're not crammed up next to people. And we've also got a little scanner, you'll see it on the left of the screen, so you can actually take a digital image of anything that you view in the search room. You pop it on a pen drive and you can take it home with you. We just ask you not to reproduce it. But again, that's great for photographs. It means you can look at them at home. This is our catalogue, which is on the council web pages, and the any text box is the one I usually use. So you can put in Gateacre, the Black Bull, you know, one of the schools that you went to, and you can see what comes up. If you're lucky, you'll get a little Photographic link on it, and you'd be able to see an image. Or if not, you could view it and come in, contact us and come into the search room. I always say when I'm doing presentations that it's not the easiest of catalogues. It's just there's a lot of data in there and it is quite hard to navigate. So if you don't find what you're looking for, please do email us, because we're always willing to help. So don't be disheartened if you put in Gateacre and you get 7,000 hits and you don't know where to start. Just email us and we'll help you navigate it. And that's me at the end. So I've popped our email address on if anyone has any queries or questions. But I'm happy to take questions after Lindsey's, or whatever, Mike, if you want me to do it now, that's fine as well. But I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. It's most interesting to see, and get us quite a sense of the history of the place, and also the depth of the resources that one can actually access. Now, do our listeners want to make any questions now, or do you want to leave them until Lindsey has spoken? Well,
silence.
I see that everybody is muted, so there's probably not much scope for actually saying anything at the moment. So on that basis, should we pass straight over to Lindsey for the Shambry-Hardman collection?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. There we go. Can everyone see that okay? Yes. Brilliant, thank you. Right, thank you very much for that talk, Helena, and thank you very much to everyone for having us. As Mike and Brian have said, my name is Lindsey Sutton, and I am an archivist working for the National Trust on the Edward Shambry-Hardman collection. So for those of you who are wondering how this sort of fits into what Helena's just said, the collection is owned by the National Trust, but it has been deposited at Liverpool Record Office, where the storage and environmental conditions are much more suitable. So just to give you a brief overview of what I'll be talking about this evening, I'll start with a brief look at who Shambry-Hardman was, his early life. I'll talk a little bit about his relationship with his wife, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Hardman's house and the business, after which I'll move on to talk a bit more about the collection itself in more detail, what it contains, and some of the projects that we've been doing recently. And finally, I'll give you some details on the best ways to access the collection. So, who was Edward Shambry-Hardman? Hardman was born in Dublin in 1898, and his father was a keen amateur photographer, and he encouraged Hardman to take landscape photographs. This photograph that you can see here, Sunshine, is one of Edward's earliest photographs, We don't know the exact date it was taken, but we know that it was taken prior to 1917. And in 1917, following in the family tradition, Edward joined the army. He served as a British officer. He served as an officer in the British Army in India. And whilst there, he started to experiment more with photography. He would develop photographs in the camp bathroom to send home to his family. They often remarked that when they received them, they used to have sand and grit on them from where they'd been developed. The photographs that he took while he was in India include some of the more military style photographs you would expect, things like army camps and soldiers in formation. And they also depict a lot of India itself at the time. Hardman took this photograph in a village very early in the morning when it was still quite misty. And he decided to take it in these conditions because he wanted to give the photograph a sense of ceremony and mystery. What it actually depicts is a local tea shop serving some of its early morning customers. So whilst Hardman was in India, as well as experimenting more with photography, he met fellow officer Kenneth Burrell, who is pictured here. Burrell was also a photographer, and together the two of them decided to leave the army and return home to set up a portrait studio in Liverpool, which is where Burrell was based. And although Burrell was interested in photography and he was a photographer, he was very much a silent partner in the business. He didn't get involved too much. So the business, Burrell and Hardman Limited, first opened its doors at 51A Bold Street in Liverpool in 1923. And it very quickly established itself as a studio for the upper classes and quite wealthy clientele in the city. The studio itself at the time didn't have a shop window front. It was in one of the upstairs properties in Bold Street. So they rented a property further down the street to help advertise the business and display photographs in the window. In 1926, Margaret Mills, who is pictured here looking very glamorous, joined the studio as an assistant, and her and Hardman's relationship really developed from there. Margaret was an established photographer in her own right. This photograph is called The Fairy Pathway and was taken in Shropshire in 1928. In 1929, Margaret moved to a photography studio in Paisley in Scotland, and she and Hardman wrote back and forth to one another the entire time. We've got hundreds and hundreds of letters between the two of them, almost daily communication. The letters are very effusive. They wrote to each other in the third person, referred to each other with pet names. Then they had a bit of a off again, on again period of their relationship. Margaret got engaged to someone else, but in the end, she moved back to Liverpool, and in 1931, her and Hardman were married. And it was really Margaret that was the driving force of the business. I think Hardman took care of the customer focused side, took the photographs, but it was really Margaret that ran the business day to day. In 1948, with Margaret's encouragement, the two decided to buy 59 Rodney Street in Liverpool's Georgian Quarter, and that became the new premises for the business and also their new home as well for the next 40 years. For those who previously haven't visited Hardman's house, stepping through the door, it's a bit like stepping into a 1950s time capsule. Everything's been preserved as if the Hardmans have just left. There are 4 floors to explore in the house. Visitors can see the studio where sitters would have gone to have the photographs taken. In there, we've got a range of Hardman's cameras on display, and we've got the studio backdrops he would have used, the props he would have used to dress photographs. And I think you can just see in the top there as well, some of the toys that he would have used to help keep children entertained. In the house, we've also got 2 dark rooms. We've got Edward and Margaret's private dark room, where they would have developed their own landscape photography and their own personal photographs. And we've also got the commercial dark room, where the staff would have worked to develop studio portraits. We've got the mounting room, where photographs were mounted, framed and packaged. And also the Hardmans' original living quarters as well. We've got their kitchen, which still includes some of the original food packaging. If anyone wants to see some tins of Heinz soup from the 1960s, this is the place to go. We've got their living room, which still has all of their personal possessions in, and the bedroom as well, which even still includes their clothes in the wardrobe, hairbrushes on the side table. The house is currently on a limited opening, but it is due to reopen in May this year. If anyone would like to visit, we strongly recommend that people pre-book tickets online first, just to avoid any disappointment. So, what kind of items does the Edward Chambray Hardman collection include? Well, in brief, it includes quite a lot. Hardman rarely threw anything away, and as a result, he amassed a huge collection of records spanning 70, 80 years. We've tried many times to estimate how big the collection is. At the moment, we think the collection is around 142,000 items, but I wouldn't be surprised to find that that number is actually a lot higher. And I think one of the things that makes the collection so unique is that it's so complete. It's one of the only European-based photographers where a photographer's entire output has been preserved intact. In 1979, Hardman was introduced to Peter Haggerty, who was the then director of the Open Eye Gallery in Liverpool. And straight away, Peter realised the importance of Hardman's collection and realised the importance of trying to preserve it. So before Hardman's death in 1988, Hardman and Haggerty set up the Edward Chambray Hardman Trust, who worked to preserve both the property and the collection. So the collection and the property were cared for by the trust until 2003, when the decision was taken to transfer ownership to the National Trust. And upon acquiring the house and the collection, the National Trust realised that the size and the conditions of the house meant that it wasn't a suitable location to store the collection, which is why the decision was taken to deposit it at Liverpool Record Office. And if anyone does visit the house, you'll see that space is quite limited in there. And you can imagine 142,000 items boxed up in there. It's quite hard to wrap your head around, I think. So the majority of the collection consists of photographic material. This includes framed and loose prints. It includes both finished prints and rough prints, which includes some of Hardman's handwritten annotations. We've got photographs which have been hand painted to colorise them. And we've got different types of negatives, some of which have been retouched by Hardman to produce certain effects on the finished photograph. So just looking a little bit then of what is in the collection in a bit more detail. Hardman's main business, as I've mentioned, and the predominant types of photographs in the collection are studio portraits. Hardman's was one of the more exclusive businesses in operation. His work was of very high quality, and having your photograph taken at Brull and Hardman's would have been a very glamorous, very opulent experience. And Hardman photographed a huge range of different people, from actors and actresses of the day to politicians, families, weddings. As Helena said, we've really got snapshots of those sort of special occasions for everyday people as well. Even though they say don't work with children and animals, Hardman did both, sometimes together. And he also regularly photographed people in uniform throughout the studio's history. But one of the busiest times for them was during the Second World War, when up to 8 sitters a day would be having their photograph taken. Another element of Hardman's business was commissions. He was regularly commissioned to take photographs by different organisations. So within the collection, we've got, examples of different industries, different fashions in Liverpool during the 20th century. He photographed things like production lines at the Jacob's Biscuit factory in Aintree, advertisements for shops like Bon Marché. I think this one is advertising a steam bath. And he was also one of the official photographers for the Liverpool Playhouse. So we've also got lots of photographs depicting various theatre performances as well. This one being the Mad Hatter's Tea Party in Alice in Wonderland. So while studio portraiture and commissions were Hardman's main source of income, his and Margaret's real passion was landscape photography. Whilst they weren't working in the studio, they were out travelling, taking landscapes. They'd often drive into the country and then explore a bit more on their bikes. And sometimes they would sit and wait for hours just for the sky to be just right, for the lighting to be just right, for the clouds to be in just the right place. I think it was a real labour of love for them. And we've got lots of different examples of Hardman's landscapes in the collection, from cityscapes, industrial scenes, to rural and coastal landscapes as well. So cityscapes of Liverpool feature heavily in the collection, and as Helena said, with some of the record office's photographs, the collection provides almost a documentary history of changes in Liverpool over the course of the 20th century. For example, there's photographs of St. Luke's Church before it was bombed, photographs of the overhead railway on the Dock Road, and photographs of buildings of Liverpool's landmarks like the Anglican Cathedral being finished here. So, as Helena also did, whilst preparing for this talk, I had a little look through our catalogue to see if we had any photographs relating to Gateacre. And I found this one, which was taken in 1931. It's described as a photograph of a construction of a new road running from Wavertree to Gateacre Brow. Unfortunately, we don't know which road it is. I know it's not the clearest of image, but I just thought I would include it. And if anyone has any ideas, let me know at the end. It would be wonderful to be able to add a little bit more information. So due to the success of Hardman's business, he also had a second studio, which is worth mentioning. The second studio was located in Chester on St. Werburgh Street, just by Chester Cathedral. And the studio was open for 20 years from 1938 to 1958. And Hardman spent around roughly 2 to 3 days a week in Chester. And as a result, there are lots of images taken in Chester, taken around the racecourse, over the Dee Bridge, in the main city centre as well. So I just wanted to touch on something that we've discovered quite a lot since we started working on this collection, and that's some of Hardman's editing techniques. So Hardman employed several techniques to create the perfect photograph. He would apply a dye and graphite to the surface of a negative to edit the image. I think when we think of photographs of this day, we think of them being very natural, but what we see in this collection is that there really was Photoshop before Photoshop. You can see in this before and after, Hardman has edited the sitter's face. He's brightened up the complexion. He's removed unwanted shadows, and he's altered the outlines of the lips, the eyes, the eyebrows. And the red transparent dye that you can see on the negative has been used to brighten up specific areas on the print and produce highlights on the hair of the sitter. And we've got numerous other examples of portraits that have been edited as well. He would lengthen eyelashes, he would make sure lips were fuller, make sure cheeks were rosier. As I say, it really was Photoshop before its time. This is the birth of the Ark Royal. It's arguably Hardman's most famous photograph. It was taken in 1950 at the top of Holt's Hill in Birkenhead, and it shows the construction of the HMS Ark Royal. The ship had just been painted white, ready for its launch from the Camberwell shipyard. And to create such an impressive photograph and to make sure that the ship stood out above everything else, Hardman retouched the negative. So red dye was applied to the gable end of the house to darken it so that it didn't detract from the ship. And you can see other areas on the original negative where Hardman has retouched it slightly, all to produce that effect that he wanted. I think even, I think the little boy pictured here, I think his socks were uneven, so he's added some dye to straighten up the socks, make him look a little bit more presentable. So as well as photographs, the collection also includes a lot of Margaret and Edward's own personal records. This includes their own personal family photographs, which includes Margaret growing up and her family. It includes their wedding photographs, which were taken by Hardman using a self-timer on the camera. And as you can see, the more sort of informal holiday snaps as well. We have a lot of their personal papers, including the letters, which I mentioned earlier, and all of their personal documents like passports, driving licenses, ration books, that sort of thing. And these records are not only a great source of information about Edward and Margaret and their lives, but also a great source of information about life in the 20th century and what it was like living during that time. The collection also contains records relating to the business itself. We've got a lot of advertising material, correspondence, staff records, a lot of financial ledgers, and we've got records relating to the day-to-day running of the business, such as customer order cards. One interesting thing we have got, which I certainly wasn't expecting when I started, we've got lots of files containing samples of hair and clothing taken from customers. And these were taken to be used by artists in order to create accurate hand-painted, hand-coloured portraits, which you can see here, that process that's gone on using that sample of hair. So I just wanted to tell you very briefly about the work myself and my colleague Alex, who is a conservator, have been doing over the past 3 years. We've worked on 2 projects for the National Trust, Hardman's Unpacked and Hardman's Revived. So the main aim of the Hardman's Unpacked project was really to gain more of an understanding of how big the collection is, what sorts of material we had, and what work needed carrying out as a priority. As a result of this project, we've catalogued an additional 5,000 items. We rehoused 16,000 negatives and associated items, which was a massive job that Alex undertook. And we've also digitised another 4,600 items, which we're hoping to make available to the public very soon. And I'll talk a little bit more about access in a minute. So we started the Unpack project in November 2019. And I think if somebody had have asked me what I thought the challenges were going to be, I probably would have said the scale of the collection, the complexity of the different records. At the time, I probably wouldn't have said a global pandemic. We were very fortunate at the time that we were working on a photographic collection and we had identified records that we wanted to catalogue. So just before the first lockdown, when I think it was all starting to go south quite quickly, I began taking some low quality images of the photographs just in case we lost physical access to the collection. I certainly didn't estimate how long we would lose physical access to the collection for. I think initially we all thought we'd just be at home until after Easter for a couple of weeks. But fortunately, I'd taken as many photographs as I could. They weren't particularly high quality photographs, but they were perfect to create catalogue entries, and it meant that the project could continue roughly as planned during those first few lockdowns. So our current Revived project is building on the work of our previous project, and hopefully we'll be able to get more of the priority tasks done by the end of this project in February next year. As part of Revived, we're working with a team of wonderful volunteers who are helping us to clean, repair and rehouse some photographic prints which have been packaged quite haphazardly, which you can see here. There's around 30,000 prints which have been packaged like this, and our volunteers have currently sorted through 10,000, so we've still got a little bit of a way to go. During our previous project, one of the things we discovered was some negatives which had naturally deteriorated over time to a point that they had become stuck together. So at the moment, Alex is working to separate 700 of these using different methods that he's been developing. The methods that he's using to separate them vary depending on the level of deterioration. So you can see here, he is using a mechanical method, using a spatula to gently separate the negatives. And he's also developed a chemical method of separation where the negatives are immersed in a solvent to help them come apart. So the images contained in these negatives remain a little bit of a mystery. We've got some of the original packaging which has the names of potential sitters, but until these negatives are separated, we're not quite sure what images we've got in there. So who knows who or what we might discover. We don't know if we have the original prints of these negatives, so it may be that these negatives are the only remaining record of these photographs. So it's really important that we carry out this work to protect the images and get them to a point where they can be catalogued, digitised and shared more widely in the future. So the work we're currently doing is focusing on the items which needed the most intervention, but it represents only a part of a much larger body of work that is required for the Hardman's photographic collection. And with continued support, we hope to be able to continue this work long into the future. So as Helena has spoken about, photographic collections have wide applicability to different areas of interest and research. And hopefully I've demonstrated that, you know, the Hardman's collection contains a wide variety of items. If anyone is interested in accessing the collection, there are a couple of different places to look. The first place I would advise is the National Trust Images website. From here, you can view and download low resolution copies of a selection of Hardman's images. I think there's around 2,000 on there currently. There is also an option to buy digital prints at a higher quality if anyone is interested in that. And if anyone would like to use any of Hardman's photographs on websites or in books or things like that, National Trust Images is the place to contact to sort out licensing agreements. If you can't find what you're looking for on the National Trust Images website, the next place to check is the online catalogue at Liverpool Record Office. Here you will be able to see tens of thousands of entries for the collection. Not every catalogue photograph has been digitised, so some may not have images attached, but are available for viewing in person at the Record Office. And despite the work we're currently doing, there's still a large proportion of the collection that remains uncatalogued, and it's going to take a long time before it's all completed. So in the meantime, if anyone is interested in a particular photograph or a particular subject that you can't find in any of the online catalogues, please do contact us via email, and we're always happy to try and help with your request. Just click the link, that might help. If anyone is interested in visiting Hardman's house, please do keep an eye on the website where you can book tickets when the house reopens in May. If anyone would like to keep up to date with news of our work on the collection, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. We are at NT Hardman's House. And if anyone is interested in learning more about the work we're doing, we've got a series of 6 short YouTube videos which look at different aspects of Hardman's photography, although you will have to listen to me talk on again. And I think that is it from me. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found it interesting.